So welcome to the information session on the Project Management Certificate Program, the PMCP course. My name is Derek Edwards. I'm the instructor for this course. I've been involved with UT for 10 years. So I started working with them in 2016. I helped as a panelist. They took about 10 of us. They took 50 hours of video, they cut it up, and they turned it into a self-paced online course. I got asked if I'd like to be the SME, subject matter expert, to help develop the online self-paced course. So I did that. And then I got invited to instruct. And so I'm a contract instructor. I'm not a UT employee. But I've been teaching with UT, the PMCP, the PPM classes since 2017. So as we go through this material, I'll share with you my contact information. You're welcome to reach out. If there's questions you have with regards to administrative type things, please reach out to Joe. But if you have questions on the course itself, please feel free to reach out to me. Okay. As you'll notice, you won't be able to talk to me directly, but what I would suggest is as we go through this material, please add any questions you have to the chat. And then at the end of the class this evening, I'll go back through all of the questions you have and answer them one at a time. Okay, so I'll stay on as long as you have questions. Otherwise, like I said, you'll have my contact information and you'll be able to reach out and ask me that way as well if you have questions on the course. So we'll go through some introductions. We'll talk about what project management is, the project management job outlook, program overview and modules, registration, prerequisites, attendance, textbook, class, and payment information, overview of the online program, which is a self-paced program, and any Q&A you have. And we'll also go through the PMP requirements at the end of the class tonight too. This is my contact information. I haven't changed this since I started teaching with UT. And so I still have students that reach out to me periodically and ask me, hey, take a look at this information. I would like your feedback on something. So I really try to make myself available. Even during the course when I teach it, I usually dial in around 5:30, 6 o'clock. The class goes from 6:30 to 9:30, but then I'll stay on as late as the last team wants to leave that evening. And so I've had teams stay on as late as midnight. So I don't kick anybody off. I am a full-time employee. I'm a director of project management for a large PM team in the specific IT industry. And so I do that during the day. But this is something I enjoy. Like I said, I've been teaching this for 10 years. So for me, this is just something I do as an extra and, to try to make an impact to the next generation of PMs. So because I'm a contract instructor, though, you can't ask me about administrative type questions in terms of sign up or anything like that, registration. Please reach out to Joe. You can see she's on the screen right now as well. But if you do have questions on this course, let me know that, and I can answer those questions as well. So this course was established in 1999. It's the University of Texas Gold Seal Certificate Program. This gives you the 35 hours you need to sit for the PMP exam. Okay, so once you get it, it doesn't expire. But I would suggest giving yourself about 3 months to prepare for the PMP exam before you take it, because it's not an easy test. Okay, we talk about this in the PMCP class. I reference a number of materials and suggestions, and I also provide recommendations from other students and other individuals from prior courses in terms of how to prepare for and get ready for the exam. But this course itself won't set you up necessarily to pass the exam the first time. Okay, that's where those references come in, the tools, the online practice tests, those types of things. So we'll cover a lot of the table, the formulas, a lot of the key things that you may see on the PMP exam, but this course is not designed as a boot camp. Okay, the way I teach this, I teach it very real world. All right, so I've taught individuals from 84 plus different industries at this point, anywhere from oil and gas to healthcare to defense department to foreign students, both outside the United States, but also students from across the US as well. Okay, so we've had a number of different people come through it. A lot of the individuals that go through this course go on to become PMs, project managers, program managers. I've had a number of PM directors come through this course and then go on and take this material back to their organizations to implement it. I've also had 3 individuals who had no PM experience before taking this course, and 2 of them became PM directors within a year of taking the course. Okay, so everybody is going to be unique in terms of how you progress in your field. But what I do try to teach is I try to make this as real world as possible. So everything you get out of this course is going to be able to be applied. So for me, a successful night is if I give you a template tonight, you can take the exam, you can use it at work the next day. Okay, that's how real world I make this. And so I really try to focus the individuals who take the course. I work with you to develop a project, right? So you and your team are going to select a project. I suggest making it either fictitious and fun or real. Okay, if it's fun or real, you're more likely to learn the materials and apply it going forward. Okay, and in that project, you're going to work on throughout the course. You're going to develop a business case, a project charter, project plan. And if you choose to do so after the course is done, you can actually implement. That's how real world these project plans are. And we've had a number of projects go on to become real world applications after this course is finished. Okay, this is also a course designed to teach you how to complete a project, right? Project management best practices, terminology, how to initiate, control, and plan a project. It's a path to gaining an overall understanding of project management and executing a successful project. But it's also, once again, tied back to once you get through the course, you get your 35 credits to take the PMP exam. So when I first started, I was teaching PMBOK 5. Then I updated the materials for PMBOK 5 to PMBOK 6. Then a few years later, I updated the materials again from PMBOK 6 to PMBOK 7. And then this year, I've updated the materials from 7 to 8. So this class that's starting in the summer is going to be tied to PMBOK 8, which is what the new PMP exam is going to be tied to beginning in July. Okay, so we definitely try to keep the material updated as we go through and incorporate those changes as they come out of PMI as well. So this program is not a prep class or a boot camp. All right. So, and even with a boot camp or a prep class, you still don't want to take the exam right off the bat. Okay. I took a boot camp previously when I got my PMBOK PMP for version 4. And so when I did that, it was, I did the boot camp, but then I still waited 3 months to take the exam. So I was ready to take it. It's the same thing with this course, right? Once you get through the class, yes, you have the 35 credits. Yes, you need to reach out to PMI and submit your application. And if you want me to review that before you do so, you can do that as well. I'll help the students do that. But once you get the approval, schedule it out 3 months. All right. Why? Because the exam is very much what would PMI do? Okay. So that's what makes it so difficult. If you have a lot of experience as a PM, you're going to see answers on the questions and say, I would do that at work, or this is what I would do in my workplace. Right. And you'll probably be incorrect. So that's why it's so important that once you get to the course, it's really about making sure not only do you know the PMBOK, but also taking the practice online tests and those types of things as well. Okay, and we talk a little bit about that in the course as well. And this is not a way to become a project management expert in 8 weeks, but like I said, you will get a lot of information out of the course. So it took me 5-10 years to develop a lot of the materials that I'm going to teach over this short time period. Okay, the 17 sessions. And so all the templates, the tools, when we talk about risk, we talk about stakeholders, communication, risk, requirements, etc. These are all things that I had to learn the hard way, right, on the job experience. Whereas in this course, you're actually going to get these materials and you'll be able to apply them going forward. Okay, so you won't be an expert, but you may find that a lot of what we cover in the course, you don't necessarily see PMs using within your own workplace. Okay. And that's the reality, right? What we cover in the course is really focused on how you can be an effective project manager. And so we're going to cover things that you may not see in the workplace. You may not see teams use project plans, business cases, project charters. But we use them in here because it's important to understand how you really plan out and execute and implement a project once you're done with it. Okay. It's also not the final course to study before you take the PMP exam. Okay. As I mentioned before, we'll cover the key tables, the formulas, a lot of the key information you may see on the exam. But you also want to read through the PMBOK. You also want to make sure you take practice tests and those types of things. So it's going to give yourself about 3 months to pass the test. You can try taking it right off the bat, but don't be surprised if you fail it. Okay. It's not an easy test to take. So what is project management? Per the PMBOK, it's a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. Bottom line is projects have a defined beginning and a defined end. Okay, the period of performance can change, the requirements and scope can change, the complexity of the project can change, but the way you manage your projects is going to stay very similar, right? In terms of you plan them out, you execute them, and then you close them, right? And so managing your requirements, managing your customers, managing your stakeholders. It doesn't matter if it's a large project or a massive program, right? Or a small project. The key is understanding how you execute and manage and plan out your project so you can be more effective going forward. And we talk about those things as we go through the course. So think of a project as an undertaking requiring a disciplined approach to producing something. So project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet the project requirements. Okay. So within your workplace, within industry, you may hear, oh, that person's a project manager, that person's a program manager. The reality is, in a lot of organizations, these terms get bounced around as the same thing, right? But in the real world, there is a difference. Okay, so from a PMI perspective, there's a difference. So I have about 29 years, going on 29 years of project and program management experience. 10 of those were in turnaround program management, so taking around programs that were struggling, over budget, behind schedule, and without changing the team that was in place, working with that team to turn those programs back around. Okay, I worked very large programs, applications such as aircraft applications, subsystems, munitions, all sorts of defense industry related applications and systems. But then I also have worked in the defense industry. I was in the military, so I started my career out as an acquisitions officer in the Air Force. I've also worked in the energy industry, and now I currently work in the IT industry. Why do I bring that up? Because you can move between industries as a project manager. That's what makes this such a unique career field, because the way you manage your projects may change from a technical standpoint across industries and organizations, but the way you manage them and lead them doesn't change. Okay, you still have to plan out your projects. You still have to determine what the requirements are, what the scope is. You have to figure out how to manage that scope. How do you develop your budget? How you develop a schedule? How you work with your team? How do you get the best out of your team? How do you create high-performing teams? Right? Look at yourself as a project leader. And why do I say that? Because it's subtle, but it's important. As a project manager, you have no authority over the people that you report to. Okay. Now, you may have heard in your organizations, you're a project manager, you have authority. Okay, so the test would be if you tell somebody what to do, see if they're going to do it. Right? Direct them, force them. It's probably not going to happen. Why? Because they don't report to you, right? They have a functional manager they report to. They don't report to you directly. And so if you try directing, forcing, telling, right, it's going to backfire on you. So that's why as project leaders, we look at ourselves in that light more so than a project manager, because while it's important to manage your projects, you really need to lead your team, right? You need to get the very best out of them because they want to have the best pulled out of them, right? So you're using emotional intelligence, you're using leadership skills, you're empowering your team. You're creating an environment where people feel safe, where they can try different things, they can think out of the box, they can think differently. Okay? And that's what your role as a PM is to do. It's not to dive into the technical aspects necessarily, but to understand the overall program so you understand how you're performing against the requirements, how are we doing against schedule, how are we meeting the customer's expectations and needs. Okay. And so when it talks about project and program management, the difference in reality is really project management is more small projects, maybe like an engineering project, a technical project. Maybe you have like, I don't know, 5, 6 people, right? Maybe you're doing a software project, a small team. A program, though, is a much larger umbrella. So it's a much larger team, as a lot more departments. So for me, for instance, when I was in the defense industry, the largest program I ever managed had 80 plus people on it. Okay, and that team consists of quality, software, engineering, hardware, prototyping, qualification testing, development testing, manufacturing engineering, operations, R&D, a number of different procurement, scheduling, planning, a number of different departments and individuals that fell underneath that program. Okay, so that's really the difference between a project and a program. Projects are much smaller in scale, programs are much larger. But once again, real world, you may find that in your organization, they call you a project manager or a program manager, even if you're only managing a small project or program. Okay, so just understand what the way the PMBOK looks at it may be different to how you and your organization view it. So project and program management involve balancing competing demands among scope, time, cost, and quality. So this graphic on the right is important. Why? Because when you lock down the scope, which is what you should do, right? You lock down the scope, which includes the quality requirements. You get agreement with the customer. Once that's locked down, then you implement and you develop your schedule, right, to ensure that you can meet all of those requirements, all of that scope, all the deliverables. And then you can develop the cost. And that cost is based on the requirements, but it's also based on the schedule, right? The number of resources you need, etc. If you imagine around this graphic as a circle, that circle would be the change order, right? The change process. Why is that important? Because we want to minimize as much as possible the amount of scope creep you see on a project. And that change control process is important to ensuring that whatever you agree to with the customer from a scope standpoint is what we lock down. And then going forward, as we execute the project, if the customer comes back and says, hey, I want you to make a change to the requirements, we can go back to them and say, sure, here's the impact. This is how much it's going to cost you. This is how much it's going to take you to get it done. If they come back and say, we really don't need it, fine. We document it and we just keep moving on as planned, right? We don't do the extra work because otherwise it becomes scope creep. And now that becomes additional funding that your company has to pay that the customer is not going to pay for in return. All right. So it's really important to understand that there's a methodical process when you put together your plan and how you execute it. But I also want you to think creatively out of the box when you're actually executing your project. And we talk about that in the course as well. So it's not just managing, but doing, right? It's not sending an email and saying, okay, I'll get back to you in 2 weeks. And then you send another email and they say, oh, I'm not done yet. Okay, I'll get back to you in another 2 weeks. Anyone can do that, right? As project managers, we need to get up out of our desks and actually talk to individuals, talk to the team, communicate, right? Pick up the phone, hold a Teams meeting, Zoom meeting, travel to the location if we need to, right? Whatever the process is, we want to make sure we're actually involved in the process of managing the projects, executing the projects. It's not just simply sending an email and hoping someone does what they need to get done. It's both a science and an art. It's a profession. So as I mentioned, I've gone over a number of industries over my career. I've been in the industry a long time. And currently, like I said before, I'm a director of project management for a large PMT. Okay, so I have project coordinators, project managers, and program managers all reporting to me. And I enjoy it, right? But it's only because of my experience and background that's allowed me to be successful with that. Okay, and so this is a career field that once you're in, it's hard to get out of, but there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, I never thought I'd ever teach, and yet I've been teaching with UT for the last 10 years. So it's something I enjoy. I like seeing the impact I make, but I also like seeing how this impacts the students to take the course and what they do going forward. Okay, it's also relying upon soft skills, not software. So some organizations will say, well, we have project management software, therefore we have project management. Not necessarily. Okay, I've worked with organizations where I got told that, and I go and talk to the PMs and I say, how do you use that software? We don't. Okay, how do you use that software? I use some of it. I don't like all of it. I use my own tools, right? This is why the software is there to support the project manager. Okay, just because you have software doesn't mean you have project management. The key with project management is developing those soft skills, that emotional intelligence, that empowerment that we talked about earlier. Making sure that you work with your leadership skills, right? Communicating with your team, getting the best out of your team because they want to do a good job, right? They want to feel empowered. They want to feel like they have a say. They have an input into the success of your projects. So those soft skills that you develop as a project manager are really critical, and they will set you up for success going forward once you become a manager of people as well. Even now, as a director, I don't use, the force or the management type traits of forcing, directing people what to do. I still apply the same leadership skills I developed as a project manager in my role now. Okay, so when I work with the team, I want to get the best out of them. I want them to feel empowered. I want them to be successful, and I will support them on that, right? And so it's the same things you want to develop as a project manager that helps set you up for success going forward in your careers as well. So why study project management? To acquire the skills to effectively manage the constraints of a project. Learn to avoid the pitfalls that can prevent a project from being successful and increase your personal professional worth. So when you're looking at salaries, you can see entry level, mid-level, senior level. This is from salary.com. And so depending on where you're located, these numbers could be much higher, they could be much lower, right? It just really depends on the geographical location, what state you're in, what industry you're in, what type of organization you're in. Even if you're overseas, right, this can change as well. And I think yeah. So even overseas, there's opportunities to work as project managers overseas as well, which is why in the past I've had students take this course from, Vietnam, Malaysia, Scotland, Mexico, Colombia, okay, Turkey, other countries, as well as from 27 different states to date. Okay, so You're going to have, when you work in this class, you sign up, you're going to work with teams. You're not going to know where those individuals come from, okay? Whether they're in the US, whether they're even in Austin, okay? You may find they're throughout the US, they may be overseas as well. And so it allows you to create an environment where you get to work with diversity, but it also allows you to take in different inputs from different people as they go through the course because they have different industry experience as well. So the demand for PMs isn't going away. In fact, every year things change, right? Industry changes. And so with AI, you're going to have project management and AI now, right? You got IT, you got defense, you got aerospace, you got oil and gas, you have all sorts of industries. There's probably people on this line right now who are in completely different industries I didn't even mention here. Okay, and that's the point, is project management will continue to be required because if projects were successful, you wouldn't need PMs. The reality is many projects will struggle or fail or overrun because they're not managed effectively, right? And so when we go through this course, we talk about what needs to be done to effectively manage and execute your projects. So this is just a sample of some of the industries that have gone through this course. I mentioned to date there's been 84. So you may be on this list, you may not be. Don't be surprised if there's other people in the class who also have different industries, and it just makes it really interesting in terms of when you work with those individuals in projects, the different thought processes, the different inputs, and incorporating all of that into your project planning. So one thing, just for those who joined us a little bit later, if you have questions as we go through this material, please add them to chat. And at the end of the class this evening, I'll go through the entire chat and answer all the questions that are laid out there. Okay, so that way you don't forget what the questions you want to ask. Just keep adding them, and then at the end, I'll go through them all. So the goals of the course: to educate you, right? Educate participants in up-to-date project management methods and techniques. As I mentioned, this is the first course that's going to be with the new PMBOK 8 material. All right, so I updated this about a month or so. We're just wrapping up the changes now, finalizing the workbook. So when we teach this in a few weeks, right, it's going to be the first time this course is being taught in PMBOK 8. I also updated previously from 6 to 7 and 5 to 6. Okay, so this is the third time I've done the updates. And so the PMBOK evolves over time. What PMI looks at and sees as important evolves over time as well. But we also try to make sure that we keep the information up to date as well. Support for the PMP and CAPM, right? This course gives you 35 credit hours, so it allows you to take either the PMP or the CAPM. I strongly recommend the PMP, and we'll talk about that at the end. But you can also take the CAPM if you don't have the experience and qualification to be able to sit for the PMP. And then build awareness, right? Continue to educate the public about the value and importance of project management. I mentioned before, I've been teaching for 10 years because I enjoy this, right? I like seeing the impact I can make on the students who take the course. And to date, on average, 50% of the classes have been word of mouth. Okay, so it just highlights that the information that I try to share in here, it can make an impact in your careers. It can make an impact in, where you work as a project manager as well going forward. So student objectives: learn the project management skills, concepts, and techniques. We use the PMBOK 8th edition. However, it incorporates the 6th and 7th editions as well. Why? Because just because the PMBOK changes doesn't mean the material in those prior versions are irrelevant anymore. In fact, there's some slides that still have PMBOK 5 in them, okay, in terms of the presentation. So it's important to understand that the PMBOK will evolve over time, but a lot of the information that's in its predecessor versions is still very valuable in terms of what you do as project managers going forward. And then, as I mentioned before, you complete this course, they don't expire. You receive the 35 hours, the Gold Seal certificate from UT, and you can use that to apply to PMI to be able to sit for the PMP exam going forward. So we do touch on the 6th. It still incorporates information from the 6th edition and the 7th edition, but now we also incorporate into the 8th edition. Okay, the current self-paced course does not include the PMBOK 8 at this time. Okay, so going forward, that will change. But currently, the PMCP course will include the new 8, okay, and the PPM class is being revised to include the new 8 as well. And then at some point, the self-paced course will also be updated to include the PMBOK 8 as well. So the PMBOK updates. So understand, between the 5 and 8th edition has been a massive change, okay? 5, 6, 7 were changes, but they were very common, very similar. With PMBOK 8, it's completely changed in terms of how you view the key information. So it no longer has knowledge areas and focus groups. Okay, now it's performance domains and focus areas. Okay. In addition, a lot of the definitions have changed. So they've evolved since the 5th edition, where a lot of those definitions hadn't changed much between the 5th and 7th editions. So with PMBOK 8, they've gone back and they've modified some of these terminologies, whether it's project management, program management, some of these other areas, which means that the PMP exam, with that changing, it will take into account what's in the PMBOK 8 as well. Okay, so I mentioned it's also included the new governance performance domains. So that's something brand new that wasn't used before. There's 6 project management principles that we touch on. It also incorporates the use of AI. Okay, AI is becoming more and more useful and valuable within organizations. I know because I see it every day. Okay, and so it's as part of the PMBOK, PMI has evolved that document to now take into account AI in there as well. And so we have that updated within the materials. We also focus on value delivery. I mentioned the new definitions, right? The new modified definitions, and then other changes that are addressed throughout the course. So there's a number of things that have changed and evolved, but there's also a number of things that stayed the same, okay? And that's the point, right? Over time, the PMBOK will evolve, but the way we manage our projects, yes, it will evolve as well, but a lot of the things that you've covered in the past are still very applicable to this current day and age, okay? Just because we've moved to AI doesn't mean you still don't have to plan, you don't have to close out your projects, you don't have to develop requirements, etc. So the online cohort, this used to be conducted in person until COVID hit. Once COVID hit, we went to remote. And so we've been teaching remote ever since. It's instructor-led, so I teach the class over the 17 sessions. And then the students dial in via Zoom. And just like with this class, right, we work in Zoom. You will be able to communicate with me in Zoom, so it's not done through chat. But it's interactive, right? So it's working with the students. The students work in the teams, they work with their groups, they work on their projects, okay? And so we go through the material as we go through the course. This is a good testimonial, and I think it's important to share because I mentioned earlier, this course won't make you an expert at the end of the course, okay? However, this individual, this was the last class I had before COVID hit, all right? So we had 16 sessions at that time. We completed 14 of them. As part of those initial 14, one of the team members in this class, they happened to be on a team where 2 individuals were driving to and from Katy each night for the classes. Okay, so for those who don't know where Katy is, it's basically near Houston. So they were driving 2.5 hours in their cars to come up to UT to take the class, and then they drove all the way home after the class, right? So they're going 4 or 5 hours back and forth twice a week. So this team had to figure, okay, how do we work this remotely so we don't have to require these 2 individuals to drive all the way up here each time? And so they worked it out. They figured out the WhatsApp, the Google Docs, etc. Right, all the things we use now because of remote training, but also for working in our workplace. Then COVID hit. In the last 2 weeks, we had to figure out how to take this course. I had to figure out how to take this course and go from something that had always been taught in person at that point to now something we're going to teach via Zoom. Okay, so project management is very much out of the box. It's being flexible. It's being able to adapt. It's not throwing your hands up and saying, "Well, I can't do that." All right, it's figuring out, work through the situation, and then implement, the change so we can be successful. So I basically had 1 week to figure out how to take this class from what had always been in person to now Zoom-based, right? And we did it, and we've done it ever since. So this wasn't such a big deal for that individual, except within their organization, they got promoted. And their manager happened to be a former student of this course as well. They took it a couple of years before this individual did. And then their manager basically told them, I want you to implement it the way you learned in the class, right? Take what you learned in that class, apply it to your project. So it made it very real in multiple different avenues, right? So this is what I mentioned with the course. I try to make it as real world as possible. Not everybody will go through this experience and see it so personally in terms of how it relates directly to work, but it just highlights the amount of impact this course had on this particular individual. They actually went on and they successfully delivered their project as well within their organization. So the program materials, once you sign up for the course, you'll get the student workbook. Okay, we do exercises, quizzes, and discussions throughout the course. There will be examples and templates. We also bring in guest speakers. So I have a guest speaker that comes in. I try to get them to come in and talk about Agile. I also try to have a guest speaker that comes in from PMI and talks about the PMI chapter. And so there's I bring those individuals in because it really is important in terms of understanding how project management ties back to Agile, because it's not apples to apples. It's like apples to oranges in a lot of ways. But also involving PMI because they can share, changes with the PMI tools, as well as talking about membership and those types of things as well. Okay, and then I try to incorporate real life anecdotes into the course as well through my experience. So this is an example of one of the templates we use. When I teach this, I don't look at it as, okay, I want you to take this and use it as is, right? So then you're looking at thinking, well, the instructor said use it this way, and that's all I can do with it. That's not going to have any benefit to you if you can't modify it, right? So look at this as a baseline. You can look at these columns and say, you know what, if I added 2 or 3 more columns of information to this could be a really useful template within my workplace. Do it, right? This is part of evolving, adapting, changing. If you can take a baseline template like this and modify it so it's even more useful within your organization, that's what's going to help you. Because then you'll use it and then it's actually going to help you. If you don't use it, it's not going to benefit you going forward. So this is an example, right? The what to communicate left is the stakeholder register. The format right is now your communications management plan. These are 2 different templates, okay? One is focused on stakeholders, one is focused on communication. But it just highlights, if you just add a few more columns, you can make a real difference in terms of the templates you use, and it becomes even more useful. All right, and so this is the type of templates that we talk about when we go through the course. And you actually take these and you implement them and use them for the projects that you and your team selected at the start of the course, so you can develop those project plans that you can deliver at the end. So the grades come from a composite of different things, okay? You have to attend 15 of the 17 sessions. Why? Because PMI will periodically reach back out and say, hey, I want confirmation this person actually took the 15 to 17 sessions. So I have to maintain that attendance record so that if they come back and they ask, can you confirm this individual's in the class and they took this, I can go back and say yes, okay? So that's why the attendance is so important. So I capture it, UT captures it electronically as well. Class participation. So you'll get a grade for your class participation, but also your team participation as well, along with all the quizzes, the tests, and the other things, the activities we do. You'll turn in a business case, a project charter, and a project plan, and then you wrap up the class with a final presentation on your project plans as well. And we go through each of those along the way. I try to make this a safe zone, right? So I want you to ask questions. Even if you think it's a stupid question, there's probably other people in the class who want to ask the same thing, but don't want to ask it, right? So for me, I know the material, so I can go through it. But I want to make sure that before we move through each slide that you understand it, okay? So I want you to feel free to ask the questions. Reach out to me after the class is done, or even, after a class and say, hey, I didn't understand this, or, can you provide input on this, your recommendations. This is not an easy class, okay? Because it's so real world applicable, it takes a lot of work. And so you should expect to spend 8 to 10 hours outside of work, outside of class each week, not just reading and doing quizzes, but also working in teams, researching your projects. Okay, so it's not an easy class, but I can promise you, once you get through it, the material you can take from this can really be applied. And the reason I say that is because a number of the students who go on after this course go on to become project managers, program managers, PMO directors, managers in other departments. Okay, so I've seen it consistently throughout the 10 years I've been teaching this. And so it's really, the more you learn from this class, the more you apply it, the more it's going to benefit you in your careers. This is an example of the Gold Seal certificate you receive once you pass the course. Once again, this doesn't expire. Okay, so from PMI's perspective, once you're ready to sit for the PMP exam, you can let them know you have this, they can verify it, and then they can go ahead and approve your application, and you can prepare and take 3 months to sit for the exam. Okay, so the online self-paced program. So this is not in person, right? You can take this immediately as soon as you sign up. You can take this on your couch, right, in your bedroom, whatever time of the day, week you want to take it. And it's really up to you. It's you and the computer. So it's an online self-paced program. It's broken out. Now, it calls out these different modules. The way the PMBOK PMCP course is broken out is different to this, but it still covers a lot of these same areas, right? Execution, risk, quality, scope, monitoring, controlling, closing. It's just not necessarily broken out that way in terms of the structure and the format for the online PMCP course. So it's completely self-guided, self-paced. You have 4-month access to the program. There's no grades, so if you're looking for employer reimbursement, There isn't a grade provided by this online self-paced course, so that may or may not have an impact within for your organization. And then the course itself is comprised of readings and scenarios. So some of the testimonials, and as I mentioned, you'll receive a copy of this presentation as well because it's being recorded. So you'll be able to go back and look at this on your own as well if you have other questions. The cohort versus the self-paced. One is structured, right? It's over 8 weeks, 17 sessions. We teach it twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays from 6:30 to 9:30. Right? And as I mentioned, I'll dial in between 5:36 and I will stay on as late as the last team member leaves that evening. And it's been as late as midnight before. So I don't kick the teams off. I let you continue to work in your projects and on your teams. It's really up to you and your team when you want to be done for the evening. Okay. The self-paced course is obviously more flexible. Self-paced, you have access to it for 4 months, and it's really up to you when you want to go through the materials. Interactivity. So with the in-person self-paced that's done via Zoom, right, we do the class via Zoom. We focus on the team project, and we apply what we're going through in the course to your project's real time. And then you also obviously can learn from and exchange ideas with your project team, other people within the course. The self-paced has no team or instructor interaction. Okay, it's your traditional online self-paced program where it's just you and your computer. We do have the videos in there. As I mentioned at the beginning of this course, when I started first working with UT in 2016, I was one of the original 10 panelists that they took 50 hours of video of. They asked us questions, they cut that up, and that got incorporated into the self-paced program. Okay, so those videos are still incorporated into that course. The class workbook is provided as part of the Zoom course, okay, the PMCP Zoom course, and you'll need access to the 8th edition. If you can get older versions, wonderful, but the 8th edition is what you're going to need for the PMP exam going forward. But like I said, we still apply the 6th, 7th, and 8th within the updated materials that we'll be teaching in June. The self-paced course, you have access to the online portal, and you'll need to gain access to the 7th edition. Okay. Availability. So the in-person course via Zoom is offered each semester, okay, 3 times a year. Classes range between 15 and 30 people. The self-paced, obviously, enrollment grants you immediate access, and you have access to 4 months. Now, keep in mind that the current self-paced course, online self-paced, is still based off of the older version, the PMBOK 7. It doesn't yet incorporate the PMBOK 8. PMI ATPs. So I'm an ATP, UT is an ATP, and so it's one of those requirements that you want to have in place just so you know that whoever you're taking the course from is certified to teach the materials. So I'll leave this in here, and like I said, you'll be able to review this separately as well as you go through the materials on your own if you'd like to do so. So the CAPM and PMP. So the CAPM is a certification for novice PMs. Okay, and the PMP is the globally recognized certification that we all want to achieve as PMs. Okay, this is what you should strive to. Even if you get your CAPM, you still want to push towards getting your PMP in the future. Okay, so the CAPM. With the CAPM, you only need a high school diploma or equivalent. You don't have to have any PM experience, right? And you need 23 hours of education. So there is a course through UT, through the business school, right? That's 23 hours, but it only permits you to take the CAPM. It's not quite the same as what this course offers in terms of working in the teams, developing the project plans, those types of things. But this 35 hours that the PMCP course offers you allows you to sit for the PMP, right? So if you can meet the 35, you get your whether it's PMCP or something else, and you have 60 months being involved with projects, assuming you only have a high school diploma, right? Then you can submit your application to PMI. They can review your application and then approve you to take the PMP. If you have a college degree, it doesn't matter if you're a bachelor's, a master's, a doctorate, right? Combinations, it's still the same. You need to maintain 36 months of working with projects, and you still need the 35 hours of training. Okay, so with the high school diploma equivalent, you need 5 years of being involved with projects. With a college degree, you need 3 years. Okay, now, as with project management in general, one of the things I'll share with you as we go through the course is I want you to be, think about being conservative when you're planning. Don't be aggressive. Don't pad. right? Be conservative. Conservative means you take into account the realities of everything that's going on within a project, okay? And so in this case, being conservative with your application would be not submitting an application for 36 months, but one with 40 months of PM experience. Why? Because if PMI looks at your application and says, you know what, those 4 months, those don't count as project management. You still have 36 months that you require for the PMP exam, and if they approve those, then good, you're good. If you do 36 months and they don't like 4 of those months, now you only have 32 months. PMI is going to come back and say, I'm sorry, you don't have enough experience to sit for the exam. Okay, so just like with your planning and execution of your projects, you want to be conservative. And so instead of putting 60, put 65. Instead of putting 36, put 40. Okay, that way it gives you some buffer there in case PMI looks at the application and isn't happy with it. And as I've done with all my students in the past, as you're in the class, if you want me to review your application before you submit it to PMI, I can do that, right? I'll take a look at it, I'll provide the input, and then you can submit it and post that feedback. You may be looking at it and thinking, well, you know what? I don't have any project management experience. I've never managed projects. Well, the reality is we all manage projects, okay? A birthday party is a project. Well, how's that possible? Well, because you have a budget, you have a schedule, you have to communicate, you have to work with stakeholders, right? You have to buy the gifts, you have to, do the thank you letters. You have to plan it out. Are we going to do the birthday at someone's house? Are we going to go and rent, Austin Park and Pizza? Are we going to go to an ice rink? What are we going to do, right? All of these things are part of planning. And so while it's just a simple project, right, the reality is it's still a project because no matter, even if it's a simple project like that, you still have to plan, execute, close that project out, okay? So I had a student who was a dental hygienist, okay? They went through the course, they got with me and said, hey, I'm a dental hygienist. I don't know how to put my application in for PMI because I'm not a project manager. I said, okay, so do you have a budget? Yes, I do. Okay, do you plan out your projects? Yes, I do. Is there risk associated with your projects? Yep, there is. Do you work with stakeholders? Yep. Do you have a budget? Yep. So we were able to take all that information, put that in together the application that they submitted to PMI. PMI saw they were dental hygienists, they weren't a project manager, but because they were able to identify how what they did tied back to project management, PMI approved them to take the exam, they passed the exam. Okay, so if you're ready to sit for the exam, you don't have to be titled a project manager. In fact, as we go through the course, some of you may find out that, you know what, I'm a de facto project manager. I don't have the title, but that's exactly what I do in my workplace, okay? And we talk about that in the course as well. So if you're interested, what's next? If you know somebody's gone through the course before, talk to them. Just keep in mind that the course that I just wrapped up earlier this year is going to be different to the one that I'm teaching in a few weeks. Why? Because this new one will be tied to PMBOK 8. So it's going to evolve from the last course I taught. Okay, but then also take a look. I've had students from Harvard take this course. I've had other universities employees come through this course. A number of different industries, a number of different organizations, anywhere from a few years of industry experience all the way up to and including the CEO level. Okay, so we have a lot of people that have gone through this course previously because they've seen the value and been able to take that value with them back to their organizations. So it's something to keep in mind when you're looking at who to take the course from. If you're looking around, you're not sure where you want to apply. There's a CP tuition payment plan that's available. If your employer offers reimbursement, you do get a grade from the PMCP class. So I do provide grades at the end of the course. I'll also provide feedback on all the deliverables that you do throughout the course as well. And if you're interested in applying for the scholarship, there's a scholarship available as well. I'll leave my contact information up here. So if you want to write this down, if after this class is done this evening, you decide, I want to reach out and ask some questions, feel free to ask me. Okay, anything you have questions with regards to the class, I'll make myself available.